Welcome back to the First Team. I'm Joe DeLeone. With me is my co-host, NFL draft analyst Ryan Roberts. Today, we're breaking down the film from Kentucky versus Ole Miss, which was a super disappointing performance for Ole Miss, game that many expected them to win. And Ryan, I want to jump in first. It's a little bit less draft related, more just talking about the current issues with Ole Miss. We're certainly going to talk projections for some of the premier prospects, especially on the Kentucky defense. But one thing stood out to me. One, there's definite concerns for Ole Miss's offensive line. I don't think that there is any hot takes involved with saying that. I think that everybody came away with that pretty quickly after that game. But in the rewatch and having the All-22, dude, I didn't totally rationalize how much they were overly throwing the football. It felt like the first 30 plays, 95% of them were passing plays. They were just dropping back. Kentucky was just dropping back in zone and just kind of sitting and waiting. There were 4-man, 5-man pressures the entire game. I'm a little concerned for what Lane Kiffin is able to do, and it felt like one of these situations where he fell for whatever bait was given to him. The O-line's a problem, but more importantly, the decision-making seemingly is a problem.
I think coaches overthink these things sometimes, Joe, because I mean, like, Lane Kiffin's an offensive genius. I don't think anybody would question that. And he's one of the best offensive play callers we have in college football or on any level pretty much. But I think sometimes when you do your scouting, right, and you see number 0 in blue and you see a couple of the other defensive linemen they have, I think you almost put a thought in the back of your mind like, hey, guys, this is going to be a little bit of tough sledding. Like we saw this with Brian Kelly in, what was it, like 2019 with Notre Dame, where like coming out of the Georgia game, he literally said like, we didn't think we were going to be able to run the ball, so we basically didn't. And it's like, that's not good strategy. Right? Like, that's not good strategy.
At least try.
You have to at least try to keep a team honest. I mean, the minute that you are one-dimensional against a team like Kentucky is where your offense is just going to kind of stagnate at some time. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely a pass-heavy approach. There's no doubt about it, which is kind of weird because Lane Kiffin's offense is usually work through the run game, right? Like they usually are a very running team. And that obviously was one of the big reasons why Kentucky was able to get the upset in this one.
So in that vein, Ole Miss's offense, I didn't have anybody written down. We should talk about Jaxson Dart, but before we get to Jaxson Dart, is there anybody on that Ole Miss offense that like you took note of? I think Trey Harris is phenomenal. I don't live in the world that he's a first rounder just yet, but man, his production this year has been ridiculous.
No, he's not. I don't think he's a first rounder either, but I will say this is that I am kind of walking back from my Trey Harris preseason takes of like, he's a draftable player, but I think he's a little bit limited. Like I didn't see a great athlete coming into this year. And
I don't show up more.
Yeah. I don't overly think that he's a great athlete now. Like I think that he's a good functional athlete. You know, he reminds me of, I don't know if I'm sure you remember him. He wasn't that long in the past, but like, do you remember James Jones that played for the Packers? He reminds me of a man because like I wouldn't say he's definitely not a burner. He's not a guy that's just going to win vertically all the time, but there's a smoothness to him. There's an explosiveness to him, and there's an attention to detail to him. I think the biggest difference between Trey Harris last year to this year, which is why I'm warming on him especially, he always had great ball skills. He always had strong hands, but he's become a better route runner this year, man. Like there was one ball where it was one of the best anticipatory throws of Jaxson Dart all day. He threw like a deep out before Trey Harris even really was. Well, he was starting to get into his break, but he wasn't overly like out of his break yet. But like Trey Harris, the hip sync, getting out of the break with explosiveness, I thought there was a lot of good things in this game for Trey Harris, who was obviously one of the better players on either side of the football this game.
I think, and assuming you didn't really have any other Ole Miss offensive players,
waiting for wide receivers to pop, man. They really didn't.
Juice Wells had no catches and he had a bad drop. Like that was weird for him.
I didn't even notice him, Joe. I didn't even notice him in this football game.
I only noticed him for the drop. I was like, there's Juice Wells. Oh, he dropped the wide open ball.
I would say this is that Caden Prescorn only had the one catch, but like there's a place for Caden Prescorn in the NFL as a big body pass catching tight end. He's not going to be a great separator. He's not going to be a guy that I think is going to be a legit tight end one on the NFL level, but I think he's going to be a rosterable tight end in the NFL, Caden Prescorn. And then like, if we're talking about Jaxson Dart, right? Like you want to just get into the Jaxson Dart conversation. I thought Jaxson Dart did a lot of good in that football game. I think that he was limited because that offensive line was atrocious. I mean, there was no clean pockets pretty much all day, but Jaxson Dart was pretty well on time most of the time. He has some good pocket maneuverability. He's actually a really good athlete. My big thing that just keeps holding me back a little bit on him, because I like Jaxson Dart a lot. I really do. I think that is an NFL quarterback. I just don't know if he has great pace to his football, man. Like, I don't think he has great.
Yeah, it doesn't fly. It doesn't really fly off of his hand. It
doesn't pop as a passer. So I think his arm strength is below average for NFL standards, or maybe at best average on the NFL level. But I think he'll play. I don't know necessarily if it's going to be a starter on the NFL level at some point, but I do think that he will be on an NFL roster for several years because he's got the good athleticism. He's got a pretty strong body. He's pretty confident in his approach. He's got good pocket movement skills. So, like, he'll play. I just don't know if I'm necessarily seeing a starter right now, at least short term.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. Bet online, where the game starts. I think a lot of people came away from this game criticizing Jaxson Dart, and I think that was completely unjust. Again, and I was really critical on Rufino and Joe Show talking about Lane Kiffin's inability to step up in these big games, or not. This isn't even a big game, but for him to meet expectations, he overthought preparation for this, and in doing so, he hung out Jaxson Dart to dry because the pass rush knew that every single play was going to be a pass, that they would just pin their ears back and they were going to go. They were always setting up and lining up as if they were going to just straight up rush Jaxson Dart. So not only are they going up against a bad offensive line, but they have the predetermined thought of, we just need to pass rush here. They're not going to try and run the football. And then every time he's dropping back, it's a four-man pressure with all these guys in zone. There's no open lanes. He had on some plays a lot of time, and he's just sitting there and he's kind of bouncing around and nothing's opening up and developing. I think he got screwed. I think for him to find success and to connect with a couple of guys, I think that was him outdoing the really harmful negative spot that he was placed in for this game. I agree with you. I continue to come away being impressed by Jaxson Dart. When things aren't working, he still finds ways to make something happen.
Yeah. Well, whether it's at the Senior Bowl or in Indianapolis, if he throws at the combine, I just kind of want to be in person to watch how the ball comes out in person, because I don't know if it's the Lane Kiffin offense, the RPO centric stuff, out of your hand quick, but like, it just doesn't look like a lot of juice to me. But like, I love the toughness he has, man. He is one of the toughest. The game that sold me on him last year was the Penn State game. If you think back to that one in the bowl game, because he got the tar beat out of him, dude. Like, it was awful because the offensive line was terrible last year too. I actually think that's not a saving grace. It's not the right word. This is good test, or this is good practice for Jaxson Dart, because guys go to the NFL sometimes who don't play for muddy pockets much, and they struggle when things get a little bit more chaotic. Jaxson Dart has a lot of practice on that, man. It has been just a absolute atrocious job by this Ole Miss team to get a good offensive line there. I mean, they spent a lot of money this offseason, but not a lot on good offensive line play. And unfortunately, it's hurting Dart, sort of, but also I think it's preparing him for the next level because things are only going to get faster and more chaotic.
Jumping over to the Ole Miss defense, they have problems at secondary. They gave up a lot of chunk plays that they should not have given up.
Yes.
But two players that I came away with being impressed by. One is their big man.
Only two?
Yeah, I thought the rest were fun. Well, we can have a conversation about some of these big name guys in a second. But the two that I wrote down, Xavier Harris, the big guy, number 51. He was rotating in. You didn't like him? I'm not saying this is a premier player. He's huge, and he held the line of scrimmage pretty well.
I have a take on Xavier Harris. You want to hear this take, Joe? This is
okay. Let's hear it.
Some people are going to hate this hot take. Out of both Kentucky and Ole Miss's defensive lines, Xavier Harris is the biggest freak on either side of the ball. Either
really?
Team.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you were going to be negative about him.
No.
The way that you gave me that look, I thought you were going to be negative about him.
Well,
Okay.
here's the thing.
All right, I'm still a ball knower.
Here's relax. Here's the thing. Xavier Harris has no idea what he's doing. His hands stink.
No.
He doesn't have a plan, but that dude is massive and can move, dude. So yes, a guy to keep a close eye on. He's still technically a rotational player. He's a true junior this year, but like he's listed at 6'7", 320. There's no chance he's only 320.
Oh, I didn't realize he was 6'7".
No, he's huge,
crap.
dude. He's huge. He is his body type is what I wish Deion Walker's body was. Cause like just trim down a little bit, man. And then you're in a much better chance. Xavier Harris is definitely a guy that could rise. It's just gonna be a question of like, can he put it together over the next year to two?
Yeah. Probably next class. I didn't see a guy that was ready now. No. And I was hoping that he was young. I didn't know what his eligibility was when I wrote him down, but like I was hoping that he was on the younger side. Knowing that he's got one more year is certainly to his benefit. Yeah. I think that in a year with linebackers where there's some uncertainty, Chris Paul Jr. to me
solid. Yeah.
Was one of the few players that I think is really solid. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't end up finding himself somewhere on day 2 and really solidifying himself. Not like an overly crazy rangy athlete like a Barrett Carter, but I saw really good eyes. I saw really good reactiveness. He was super downhill. He wasn't allowing anything after first contact from ball carriers. I think that's just a really solid, well-rounded third-round Mike linebacker that you draft and ends up being a centerpiece. Not your best defender, but just an anchor, a guy that you know you can trust with the green dot. He was great at Arkansas, and it feels like he's one of the few leaders that always comes to play when there's other guys we're going to get to in a quick second that don't always come to play on a snap-to-snap basis.
Well, he's 6'1", 235. He's only a redshirt junior, so he could be in this class potentially in 2025 or he could be in 2026. And he was just in the right spot a lot of the time, right? Which I think that's a testament. And I think he's overall a solid athlete. Like, I don't think he's a deficient athlete, but I don't think on the other side of it that he's a great athlete where he's going to be a difference maker on the NFL level. But I agree. I think that he could be a guy that has a role as a backup special teamer type of player. Like, I would not be shocked at all about. You know who he reminds me of, Joe? He reminds me of a kid that the San Francisco 49ers draft in like the 5th round, and he ends up just outplaying being a 5th rounder. Like he projects as that player to me. Can I say a weird player and then a player that I thought had a good game? What the heck are we going to do with Suntarine Perkins, number 4, dude? What are we going to do with this kid? He's listed on the depth chart as the defensive end. He played off ball every rep that I saw. He is 6'1", 210 pounds. No idea where to put him, but like the dude's everywhere.
He looks like a safety almost the way that he's built.
He's going to be a bizarre one. He's only a true sophomore, so he's got some time. But, man, he was all over the place, dude. I was like, who the heck is that? And then I see his size. I'm like, oh, that's going to be a weird one. That's going to be super weird. So he's just a guy to keep on the back burner. I will say this, because I know we're going to talk about maybe a couple defensive linemen that didn't really show out. But I thought that I saw plenty from Princely Unamielen in this game that still gives me hope about him in as a prospect. I think that he's twitched up and explosive, dude. And when they weren't cutting his knees out, he was good.
Yeah, my only thing with him is I'm starting to fall off on him. I'm starting to fall out on him, man. There's too many reps where
this game. I thought he played with better effort in this game, man. I thought he was
I just see too many times on film in this game where I peeked over at him and he just looks like he's giving like 75. But that's the problem there in the statement of what you just said. I thought he gave better effort. Yeah. Why isn't he going full speed? There's times where he's coming downhill and he's colliding with blockers and he's wincing and shielding himself. That's not a defensive lineman that is going to succeed in the NFL. That's not. And unless I see him hunting for heads more and actually playing as an edge rusher, I would be deathly scared if my team took him in the first round. I'm not there with him, dude. That stuff is uncoachable and unfixable. He's soft. Dude, there's no way around that. He is soft.
He had his sack from the backside where the pursuit speed was bananas. And then he had another one where there was a read and he collapsed on the quarterback, and it was a good job by him because he saw who had it. And man, his closing speed is just super impressive for a guy his size. So I don't think he's there yet, but like, I don't know. I like this game a little bit more from him than I think you did. I also will say this. Jared Ivey, defensive end, number 15. He's going to play in the NFL forever. I don't think he's going to be I think he's like an early day 3 type of player. I think he's like a 4th rounder ish, but he reminds me of like that. What's that one guy's name? Actually, I don't want to say his name because I'm going to completely butcher it. But like, there's his last name's Robertson in the NFL. He's just this tall defensive end that plays inside, plays outside, and has just been around forever. He's never been a 10 sack guy, but he's been like a 5-6 rotational dude. And I see him being that type of player because at 6'5", 285, he can move all over the place a little bit.
Before we jump over to Kentucky, anyone else?
I mean, the negativity, I texted you about this. I would just say this. I've heard that Walter Nolan has played better this year. Okay. And and the flashes are certainly there. I put one rep on the timeline where it was just like the explosiveness for a kid that is 6'4", 300 pounds. It's there and it's real. Right. But then, man, like there's just some reps where I just don't think he plays hard at all. And there's a couple, he got
washed out.
He got pancaked a couple times in this game too against not a great Kentucky offensive line where I'm just like, you should be dominating every rep and you're not, right? So I'm not there on Walter Nolan. Hopefully he continues to get better, trending upward. But I saw the best of Walter Nolan in this game and I saw the worst of Walter Nolan, which is what I'm scared of most.
My focus is on for Kentucky is on defense. Did you have any offensive players that you want? Because I legitimately I wrote down Dane Key. I thought that Dane Key had a nice game and what he was able to do. But were there any offensive players that like you legitimately thought were their offensive line's actually not bad? They have a couple offensive linemen. Eli Cox at center is pretty strong, and then I thought Marquez Cox is big, strong kid, but I don't know if he's like going to go anything earlier than like a 6th or a 7th rounder.
Yeah, Marcus Cox is also like 25 already or something like that. So like he's been around forever. I think Eli Cox is a day 3 center that could find a role as a backup on the next level. I like him. Dane Key reminds me of Tim Patrick, dude. Nothing flashy about him, but he's going to block.
Smooth.
He has great hands. He's going to run solid routes. Like he's going to play in the NFL. And then Berrien Brown, if they could ever get the ball to Berrien Brown, is dynamite, dude.
What the hell, dude? Well, I mean, I'm praying for him because he's got Wimsett who doesn't throw the ball at all, and then he's got Vandegrift who's just all over the place. So it's going to be tough getting him the football.
He is dynamite, though, dude. That kid is going to legitimately run 4.2 high. Like he's going to run like 4.28. I guarantee it. He is electric with the football in his hands. But like that's the only two. I like the 2 wide receivers. The offensive line is just mad to me. The quarterback position is a problem for them, and the offensive play calling isn't great either. I was actually surprised they won this game, to be honest.
Yeah, I know that. Well, I still stand by, and I hate everyone that after this game was like, Kentucky's better than you all thought. No. Ole Miss handed this game over to them. It's annoying when that's the reaction. I don't think a lot of people are ever willing to kind of like really dig into what's behind the face value information that's been given to us. Defensively, though, I got to give a shout to Deion Walker had a good game, but it was mostly because nobody was blocking him. Octavius Oxidine is the coolest freaking name.
Number 8, yeah.
And I thought that he showed some just really high effort, some good physicality and strength. He was pretty disruptive in the inside. He's got a pretty big, powerful frame. Did you write him down at all? Did he catch your attention?
He did, and then I went and looked at his profile, and I was like, he's 6'1", 280. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do with that, man. Like, I don't know what to do with that.
Damn it! But I didn't realize he was that short. I didn't think he was that short on film. That sucks.
That's what he's listed right here, unless this is a wrong measurement. But I mean,
he's probably shorter than that.
He was honestly one of the better players on either side of the football in this game, in my opinion. Like, he had a couple eye-popping reps. Deion Walker, dude, like. His pad level still stinks. His body's still sloppy, but nobody could block him. I mean, so like we have to have a very deep conversation about him at some point this draft process, because a lot of what he does is going to translate, but a lot of the stuff that he does also do is just not going to translate. It's not going to be as easy as what it is right now in the college game. So we're going to talk about him deeper into this process. I thought the 2 linebackers played really well in this game for me. Both of them. Jamon Dumas-Johnson, I think, is a forgotten player in this class, but I think that he could be a starting inside linebacker in the NFL and just a solid player. I still believe that with John Dumas-Johnson. He's smart, he's downhill, and he's physical. Those things play on the NFL level, at least on a partial basis. They do. The other kid, De'Eric Jaxson, number 54, who had some decent spring grades.
Yep.
He is a much better athlete than Jamon Dumas-Johnson, at least more explosive. His eyes are inconsistent, though. But when his eyes are in the right spot, which they are at times, that kid's good. Like, he's a good football player, and he strikes coming downhill. So number 54 on the inside of the Kentucky defense is definitely a player I have my eyes on because he is going to be in the 2025 class.
Only thing that was disappointing, I guess, final thought, not getting to see Maxwell Hairston was a little frustrating because, like, I don't know. I'm obviously going to grade him if he's in this upcoming class, but like for the way that we're doing this exercise, probably not going to get to Kentucky again. I wanted to see how he would do against this passing attack, and I think he could have had a big game. Not getting to see him kind of sucked. But you hit on the remaining defensive guys that drew my attention, unless you have anyone else before we wrap up here.
Yeah, and I would just send a quick shout out because you're right. It was unfortunate to not be able to see a player like a Maxwell Hairston because he could be one of the top corners in the 2025 class. But a younger guy to just keep an eye on, I think, is DJ Waller, who is number 5 cornerback. He's a transfer from Michigan, 6'3", 202 pounds, and he made 1 or 2 nice pass breakups in this game, but it was just the body type that really got me. I'm like 6'3", 202. That looked like he had solid movement skills. So just a guy, kind of a future guy for Kentucky to keep an eye on outside of Maxwell Hairston on the back end.